85% of all opioids manufactured in the world are consumed within the United States.
Doctors flooding the country with opioids have faced little scrutiny.
One has to question whether or not they are really drug dealers in white coats.
A child left without a parent.
Certain things that I wish that I could talk to my mother about still today, because she's my mom, and I was robbed of that.
A mother of 4 overdosing in front of her kids. Her marriage ripped apart.
When you go to the doctor and you get directions, you do what you're told. I did that and became an addict.
A first-of-its-kind investigation exposing some of the doctors behind the opioid epidemic.
Cut that off now.
An investigation that got results. An FBI raid, arrests, congressional action.
That, again, I'll go back, is a result of your good investigative reporting.
We hold doctors accountable and ask why the federal government would put a drug distributor in charge of a critical opioid oversight program.
It sort of shocks your conscience.
Is that a conflict?
I certainly think so.
An investigation that took nearly a year to research and report.
Basically, it's legalized dope.
Tonight, we take you through the series of stories, the findings, and the fallout. Investigate TV presents Licensed to Pill.
Every day, 115 Americans die from an opioid overdose. This national epidemic reaches every community, including ours. Tonight, Investigate TV uncovers doctors prescribing high amounts of opioids, in some cases, killing their patients.
Nestled in the foothills of Tennessee, a parking lot lined with cars representing the big business this small town attracts.
You'd have to be pretty dumb that you can't figure all this stuff out.
A doctor pumping out millions of pills every year.
I know I'm mad and I'm sorry.
A twisted form of medical tourism luring patients from all over the Southeast, rattling this small Rocky Top town.
This is awful. This is drug dealing. Not medical care.
Under the Medicare prescription program, Dr. Mark Murphy prescribes more opioids than any other medical professional in the country.
Is he coming in today?
And when we showed up at his Lewisburg, Tennessee office,
cut that off now.
An employee chased us across the street and refused to answer any questions.
If he's not here, who's writing his prescriptions?
Basically, it's legalized dope.
The police chief wants the doctor and his pill seekers out of his town.
Do you think it's a pill mill?
I believe it is.
You do?
I do.
Why?
Well, not even being a police officer, I'm just common sense. Why would people from out of state be coming to here to get prescriptions? In that volume, it's not normal. Seeing someone from Alabama is not uncommon, but when we're seeing that volume of traffic from Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia in one place, it's quite unusual.
What's the farthest away you've seen a plate from?
Louisiana.
Dr. Murphy has a checkered past. The state of Alabama accused him of over-prescribing opioids. He let his Alabama license expire and now solely works out of Tennessee.
Why do y'all come from Alabama here?
You can't get a pain doctor.
Sheila Rogers drives her neighbor across the state line for regular visits with Murphy.
But you think he's following every rule?
I believe he is to the best of his capability.
She says her 74-year-old neighbor still hurts from a broken hip.
It's ridiculous that people can't have pain relief. I know there's people that abuse them, but you know what? If they're stupid enough to do that and die, that's their own damn fault.
In 2016, drug overdoses claimed more lives in the U.S. than the Vietnam War, more than 64,000.
This is, without a doubt, the worst drug addiction epidemic in United States history.
Dr. Mark Murphy is not alone. Investigate TV examined the country's highest prescribers of opioids and found many doctors handing out these powerful pills at alarming rates.
If you're prescribing that aggressively, there is no question that you're killing patients.
Over a 3-year span, the top 1,000 prescribing medical professionals wrote more than 14 million prescriptions for less than 2 million elderly and disabled patients enrolled in the Medicare prescription program.
One has to question whether or not they are really drug dealers in white coats. I don't think they could be prescribing in those quantities and not realize that they're harming people.
Andrew Kolodny serves as co-director of opioid policy research at Brandeis University outside of Boston. we showed Kolodny a list of the top 1,000 opioid prescribers in the country. Topping the list, Dr. Mark Murphy, who in the 3 years we analyzed wrote 70,000 opioid prescriptions for just 3,000 patients. In the Medicare Part D program, Arkansas Dr. Buchaya Garlapati wrote the second most prescriptions. In 3 years, nearly 58,000. Doctors in Georgia, Kentucky, and Louisiana each gave patients more than 40,000 opioid prescriptions in the 3-year period we analyzed. None of these doctors has been sanctioned or charged, and none responded to our requests for comment.
This is a red flag for inappropriate and dangerous medical treatment.
Potentially dangerous because the federal government has had guidelines on when opioids are appropriate. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention writes experts agree that opioids should not be considered first-line or routine therapy for chronic pain. Adding benefits of long-term opioid therapy for chronic pain are not well supported by evidence.
The doctors who are the most aggressive opioid prescribers, they're not treating post-surgery pain. They're not treating pain from an accident. They're not treating what we would call acute pain. They are generally prescribing opioids for chronic, non-cancer pain.
We did a background check on all of the top 1,000 prescribers and found 95 have been sanctioned for inappropriately prescribing medicine. 22 either face criminal charges or have been convicted. Last year, a grand jury in Texas indicted Dr. Howard Diamond.
I haven't seen him. I don't want to see him.
Allison Holly was just 16 years old when her mom died.
She lived about 10 or 11 years with this pain.
Yeah.
In 2001, Holly's mother suffered nerve damage in a car accident. But for nearly 11 years, she functioned quite well, holding down 3 jobs at the same time, doing hard work, a waitress, cosmetologist, and on weekends cleaning cabins at the lake.
If she was able to do that, why would she need the opioids?
You know, that was a question that I've always wondered myself.
In 2012, Holly's mother went in for a sleep study and received a referral for Howard Diamond. Days later, she left Diamond's office with a handful of opioid prescriptions.
What led her to start taking opioids?
I guess it had a lot to do with her putting so much trust into her doctor. Diamond told her she needed them.
After popping those pills, the workaholic barely left the couch.
She was literally a zombie. Like, we could eat dinner with her and she would fall asleep in her food. She slept all the time. She couldn't function by herself.
In the summer of 2014, Holly's mother died of an opioid overdose. Her death prompted a DEA investigation into Diamond. But still, while that unfolded, overdoses killed at least 19 more of his Texas patients. And even after being charged, the DEA says Diamond wrote prescriptions from jail.
You would think that with that many people that are dying from the same issues, from the same doctor, that they wouldn't allow him to prescribe medication anymore.
At the age of 16, Holly briefly quit school, a struggling teenager left without a mother because the government says Diamond unnecessarily prescribed opioids.
I should have gotten to experience more life with her than she did. And it's like she didn't get to see me graduate high school. She won't get to see me get married and anything like that. And of course, it's gonna be hard for me, you know. And it's just certain things that I wish that I could talk to my mother about still today, because you know she's my mom, and I was robbed of that.
You were robbed of your mother by this doctor.
Yeah.
But there's more. Our investigation found across the country, state medical boards sanctioned 53 doctors who are still able to practice medicine, like John Richard, a Kentucky family doctor. The medical board said he prescribed large amounts of a controlled substance, accusing him of gross incompetence, gross ignorance, or malpractice. The Kentucky Medical Board gave him minor sanctions. Richard is still practicing and is one of the country's highest prescribers of opioids. A map of the top 1,000 prescribers shows a crisis for the Southeast. Mark Murphy's office in Lewisburg, Tennessee, with a population of 12,000, may be the epicenter.
If he's number 1 in the nation, no, that's way out of our zone.
On our trip to Tennessee, 45 minutes after Murphy's office opened, he finally drove up, parking next to the back door. Someone else hopped in his car and drove away. Earlier that morning, a few cars pulled into the lot 30 minutes before the office opened, in line just after dawn, waiting for a doctor licensed to pill.
You always see Alabama plates over here, so why would they come all the way up here from Alabama if it wasn't a pill mill?
Fallout from this story and Dr. Mark Murphy coming up later. But it's important to point out that some of the top 1,000 providers prescribe opioids for reasons experts call legitimate, like end of life, cancer, and short-term pain issues. Next, unlicensed to pill.
We probably have a problem with that doc.
A long-time law enforcement agent says our analysis provided him with a new roadmap to investigate doctors. The findings that he says raise some serious red flags when we come back.
The Investigate TV team completed background checks on the top 1,000 doctors in February of 2018. Some doctors have been sanctioned since that research was completed.
You don't have to be a medical doctor to prescribe opioids. We found physician assistants and nurse practitioners among the top prescribers of opioids in the country. Our findings and analysis even shocked one longtime law enforcer.
Counting pills one by one takes time.
This is a personal issue to me. It wasn't when I started.
John Dowdy counts pills for a living. He's not a pharmacist, but a law enforcer.
It's hard.
The head of Mississippi's Bureau of Narcotics sees the impact these pills have on people in his state.
When you see, a 21-year-old kid who's dead in his parents' home from a drug overdose who just got out of rehab 2 months earlier, I mean, if that doesn't make it hard for you, you have no soul.
Dowdy knows that pain too well. Last year, a relative died of an opioid overdose. Another barely survived.
One of those relatives actually got fentanyl instead of heroin and was dead when he got to the emergency room, but the emergency room doctors were able to revive him. And he got treatment, and he's clean now.
The pain Dowdy and thousands of others in Mississippi have felt got the narcotics enforcement chief looking at the number of pills prescribed in his state. It takes a lot of counting to reach that number.
There were over 201 million dosage units of opioids dispensed in the state of Mississippi in 2016.
That's pills.
That's pills, individual pills, 201 million plus. When you do the math, that means that every living, breathing person in the state of Mississippi from infant to elder could have had about 70 dosage units each.
70 pills each.
70 pills for every living person in the state of Mississippi.
That's incredible, right?
It's staggering.
Dowdy says neighboring states like Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, and Arkansas likely have similar pill problems.
If you want to know about how big of a problem it is in the United States of America, the United States makes up about 5% of the world's population, but we consume 99.7% of all hydrocodone products manufactured in the world.
Investigate TV analyzed 3 years' worth of data of the top 1,000 Medicare Part D opioid prescribers in the country. The federal program is made up of the elderly and disabled. Our investigation has found some providers prescribe what experts call an alarming volume of opioids, like Medicare's sixth highest prescriber, who's not a doctor, but a nurse practitioner in Laurel, Mississippi.
A nurse practitioner prescribing at high levels, does that ever raise any red flags?
Absolutely, it would raise red flags.
Darius McGee works at the Laurel Pain Clinic. In the 3-year period we analyzed, McGee, a nurse practitioner, wrote 43,000 prescriptions for opioids. The doctor at that clinic, Vivek Barkley, only wrote 16,000. Our findings caught the attention of Dowdy.
It would certainly be something that we would probably take a really hard look at.
Why is that?
Well, because number one, it would be uncommon for a nurse practitioner at a pain clinic to be writing more prescriptions for opioids than the doctor running the pain management clinic.
To put this in perspective, while Darius McGee has written 43,000 prescriptions in Medicare, the next highest nurse practitioner wrote almost half as much, 20,000 fewer claims than McGee. But it's not just nurse practitioners raising questions. Of the top prescribers we analyzed, 185 list their specialty is interventional pain management.
That's concerning.
Patrick Waring is a doctor and instructor in interventional pain management. This book is his Bible.
These are the guidelines from the Spine Intervention Society that covers all these procedures in detail. There's a whole science dedicated to the treatment.
Are there any opioids in there?
No, there's no opioids. There's not a single mention of opioids in this entire book.
Yet in 3 years we analyzed those 185 doctors who tell the federal government they specialize in interventional pain management wrote nearly 3 million opioid prescriptions.
The pure interventional pain management specialist should not be prescribing large amounts of opioids.
Our analysis also found general practitioners and family doctors writing large amounts of opioids. 199 of these doctors are among the top 1,000 prescribers. Number 212 on the list, Morris Brown, a family doctor in Dayton, Ohio. The state medical board cited him for prescribing opioids for headaches and inappropriately prescribing high doses of narcotics.
If it's a family practitioner or a general practitioner and they're showing up on a list as a high volume opioid, we probably have a problem with that doc.
This year, Morris Brown surrendered his license in Ohio. But there's more. In 2015, we found 137 doctors wrote prescriptions for opioids to patients that on average exceeded the number of days in a year.
Let's do the math. In 2015, Colorado pain management doctor Ori Clemens prescribed 117,000 days of opioids to 172 patients. Let's divide the number of days Clemens prescribed opioids by the number of patients. What we get? 685. What that means, for the 365 days in 2015, Dr. Ori Clemens prescribed enough opioids to last every patient on average 685 days.
Ori Clemens voluntarily surrendered his medical license last year, but we found 121 doctors who still have an active medical license, but in 2015 prescribed an average of more than 365 days worth of opioids to their patients.
That's definitely going to throw up red flags, and you know, that would be something that certainly we would look at.
Keep in mind, in some cases, patients may need to receive a prescription for multiple opioids in one day, so the data alone may not tell the full story.
85% of all opioids manufactured in the world are consumed within the United States.
John Dowdy's made it his mission to save people's lives.
Why do we want to let another life go? I mean, if we can make a difference and we can save just one life, I think we've won.
As he continues to count the pain pills dispensed in his state, Dowdy's personal pain has given him a new outlook on the opioid crisis, which on a yearly basis kills more people nationally than the population of one of Mississippi's largest cities, Biloxi.
It's unfortunate, I think, in our society that you have people who look at addicts and saying, well, it was their choice. They choose to do this. I used to be one of those people, but I have come to realize that addiction is a disease. I don't think somebody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, I think I'm going to choose today to ruin the rest of my life and the lives of everybody around me.
After that story aired, John Dowdy told us our analysis provided him with a new way to investigate doctors. We reached out to Ori Clemens and Darius McGee for a comment. Neither responded. Still to come on License to Kill.
You think about that. You mean you got paid for ruining my life? You got paid for destroying my life? You got paid for all the hell that I had to go through? That hurts.
Doctors prescribing for profit, costing one patient her marriage, almost her life. And later,
It's giving the inmates the keys to the jail doors.
a story that prompts congressional action. licensed to pill. We'll be right back. It's a painkiller that's 100 times more powerful than morphine, and the drug's maker has paid millions to doctors prescribing for profit.
I almost didn't make it.
This is what happens when a wife and mother gets hooked on opioids by a doctor prescribing for profit.
You're lucky to be alive.
Amen. Absolutely.
Tamison Witherspoon's story started in 2014 following complications from surgery. Witherspoon's doctor sent her to a pain clinic to help alleviate post-procedure pain. The doctor who signed off on her prescriptions, John Couch. According to the federal government, he was one of the highest prescribers of opioids in the country.
I've never met him.
That's crazy.
I've never met him.
How many times did you go to that office?
A whole year.
Witherspoon never met her doctor, but his nurse still gave her prescriptions for 5 different pain medications, including Subsys.
Point the nozzle into your mouth and under your tongue.
A powerful fentanyl spray meant only for cancer patients.
You don't have cancer.
I don't have cancer. I've never had cancer.
So why are you taking a cancer drug?
That's what I was prescribed. And I'm the patient. I'm not knowing. I'm just doing what I was told.
Instantly, Witherspoon says she was hooked.
I would go into episodes of, I didn't know who I was. I mean, I would be walking around with no clothes on.
The addiction tore apart her life, breaking up her marriage.
And I was so embarrassed, so ashamed from coming from being this just great neighbor, great friend, great mother, great wife, to an addict. That was so shameful, and it was what happened to my life was awful, and it didn't have to happen. It could have been avoided.
Experts say Subsys is one of the most potent drugs a doctor can prescribe.
The Subsys spray comes in doses that are so strong, one squirt could easily kill somebody who's not accustomed to taking opioids. These are lethal weapons.
Unknown to Witherspoon, while her doctor prescribed Subsys, he also received money from the drug's manufacturer, Insys Therapeutics.
Insys really sort of set a new bar for sliminess.
Over 21 months, Insys paid Couch and his partner Jilu Ran consultant and speaker fees to prescribe the drug, all totaled $271,000.
How bad were these guys?
These guys were the most egregious form of greed I have ever seen in my career.
Couch and his partner caught the attention of the DEA.
These doctors held themselves out as giving these highly addictive fentanyl products to these patients who obviously didn't need it.
The DEA launched an undercover investigation. In 7 trips to Couch and Ron's office, their undercover agent only met Couch once for 42 seconds.
All right, we'll try that first and see if that helps, okay? All right. Get you some medicine going.
The DEA says the doctor's practice was a multi-million-dollar business.
On a monthly basis, they were making in excess of $200,000. When we raided the clinic in May of 2015, we seized in excess of $13 million in property, cars, cash, bank accounts, you name it.
That included a warehouse filled with those luxury cars with personalized plates. The DEA estimates 240 people died in these doctors' care.
In 31 years nearly with DEA, I've never seen anything like this.
Last year, a judge sentenced Couch to 20 years in prison, Ron 21.
We took those 2 pieces of garbage off the planet, and they're in prison. All right, and that's where they belong because they've harmed a lot of people.
Creating addicts and a death toll, all while raking in hundreds of thousands of dollars in speaker fees from the drug's maker.
When a speaker program was a complete boondoggle, all it was a way to kick money back to the doctors.
Couch and Ron's share was a small part of the Insys pot of money. Over a 4-year period, Insys paid more than 13,000 doctors $18.7 million in food, travel, and consultant fees. The FDA has strict rules that Insys can only market Subsys as a drug for cancer pain. But nearly half the payments went to doctors who don't specialize in cancer or pain fields. In that group, psychologists, sports medicine doctors, and even a marriage therapist. Florida doctor Edward Lubin doesn't deny he received $160,000 from INSIS. In an email about his paid speeches, Lubin stated he didn't advocate the use of Subsys for non-cancer patients. According to Medicare data, Lubin wrote the third highest amount of Subsys prescriptions in the country. Lubin would not answer if he ever prescribed Subsys for non-cancer patients. Florida anesthesiologist Bart Gatz took $230,000 of INSIS money for consulting and meals. Gatz prescribed 453 Subsys claims. His attorney told us even if Gatz prescribed for non-cancerous ailments, he did nothing wrong. Legally, a doctor can prescribe Subsys to non-cancer patients, but they must complete required FDA training for the drug. Gatz's attorney would not say if his client did. Lubin says he did complete the training.
Located on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, I am Dr. Jeffrey Goldstein, a licensed and board-certified physician.
INSIS paid New York doctor Jeffrey L. Goldstein $215,000. Goldstein wrote 304 Subsys prescriptions. His website says Dr. Goldstein has extensive training in nutritional and cosmetic medicine. Goldstein works at a med spa with another doctor, Todd Schliffstein.
Other med spa services we offer include cosmetic injectables, cosmetic fillers, and a full line of laser skincare services.
That med spa has posted dozens of pictures of cosmetic procedures on Facebook, including a patient's butt augmentation. But still, INSIS paid Schliffstein $146,000 to market the cancer drug, Subsys. In 3 years, Schliffstein wrote 91 Subsys claims. The Subsys prescribed by Goldstein and Schliffstein cost $5.5 million, about $14,000 per prescription.
This company, in my view, went beyond what they should do lawfully. They helped to create this problem.
Last year, the state of North Carolina filed a complaint against INSIS, accusing the company of pushing the drug to non-cancer patients. In that complaint, the Attorney General alleges a Subsys executive told a sales rep doctors do not need to be good speakers, they need to write a lot of Subsys prescriptions.
They were rewarding doctors with payments in order to get them to prescribe more. That's wrong. That's not lawful.
It makes Tamison Witherspoon fume. The doctor prescribing her a potentially killer drug took money from the drug company.
The only reason that I was ever prescribed Subsys is so somebody can get rich and get paid. That's it. Not because I need it.
In November of 2014, she checked herself into rehab and got clean. Today she's engaged and says she's turned her life around, but will never forget the crippling addiction and the doctor who put her on that path.
You mean you got paid for ruining my life? You got paid for destroying my life? You got paid for all the hell that I had to go through? That hurts. But you move on.
INSIS suspended the Subsys speaker program. You'll hear more about the doctors we mentioned in that story, as the questions we raised also caught the attention of investigators. That's coming up later. But up next, if he's not here, who's writing his prescriptions? Weeks after we made our trip to Lewisburg, Tennessee, the feds show up at the office of the nation's highest prescriber. License to Pill gets results. Coming up.
Investigate TV tackles the tough topics.
What happened to my life was awful.
When your health is compromised, we investigate.
They are really drug dealers in white coats.
Corporate greed exposed.
How do you trust them to run this program?
The powerful held accountable with in-depth journalism led by award-winning journalist Lee Zurich. We're your watchdog. Search Investigate TV on your Roku device. Download it now.
Federal investigators raided the office of the nation's top prescriber of opioids. That raid took place 1 week after we profiled that doctor from a small Tennessee town.
He's a fabulous doctor. I see nothing, no reason for him to be in trouble.
Rose Thomason was shocked to learn at least 12 federal agents in a rented mini storage truck showed up at Murphy's Tennessee office. The DEA, FBI, and U.S. Attorney's Healthcare Fraud Unit executed a search warrant. That search warrant is sealed, but they seized dozens of boxes of records. Thomason drove from Alabama to Murphy's Tennessee office. Her 3 o'clock appointment had been canceled.
I don't know why they would even come here. I mean, he doesn't keep anything here. He doesn't keep drugs or anything.
Murphy's attorney had no comment. The U.S. Attorney's Office would only confirm they executed a search warrant on the office. Still to come on License to Pill.
That should be dead.
Is that a conflict?
I certainly think so.
Doctors prescribing for profit with little oversight. Our investigation might show you why. It's next on License to Pill.
For more on our series, go to investigatetv.com. There you can also find contact information for the Investigate TV team.
Doctors are prescribing opioids so dangerous the federal government requires additional certification. But we discovered Big Pharma is administering regulatory control with the government's blessing.
Headlines broadcasting big penalties.
McKesson has agreed to pay the U.S. government a record $150 million fine.
And repeat problems.
McKesson settled, paying more than $13 million in fines.
During the country's deadly opioid epidemic, the nation's largest drug distributor faces mounting lawsuits, sanctions, a company in the headlines for the wrong reasons.
McKesson Corporation overcharged them for drugs supplied to Medicaid patients.
But while the federal government has accused McKesson Corporation of suspicious business practices,
it sort of shocks your conscience.
In 2012, the same federal government entrusted McKesson to begin overseeing a program responsible for regulating whether doctors properly prescribe the most dangerous opioids on the market.
Does that really make sense?
No, it's given the inmates the keys to the to the jail doors.
About 7 years ago, the FDA approved what's called the Turf REMS program to prevent misuse and abuse of fast-acting fentanyl drugs, which can be up to 100 times more powerful than morphine. The Turf REMS website says these drugs are indicated only for the management of breakthrough pain in adult cancer patients who are already taking opioids.
The purpose of the Turf REMS program is to make sure that these drugs stay only with those that it's indicated for and it's proven safe for. And that has not happened. And having McKesson oversee it certainly is not going to serve that purpose.
Attorney Rick Hollowell calls the program a sham. Hollowell's client, Dina Demarest, may help explain why.
That should be dead. I never really said it out loud.
Following a minor surgery, a family friend referred Demarest to New York City doctor Jeffrey Goldstein, who prescribed her a powerful fentanyl spray for cancer pain, sepsis. Demarest never had cancer.
Did he tell you it's primarily for cancer patients?
Never.
Goldstein steadily increased the dosage amount to the highest allowed, 1,600 micrograms.
From what he was giving me, people died from a lot less.
Sepsis is one of 10 drugs in the Turf REMS program. Program guidelines require doctors and their patients to both review and sign this form, which warns them of the seriousness of the Turf REMS drug.
Have you ever seen a form like this?
No.
You've never seen this? Can you look at it for me? You never signed this form?
No.
That form, part of the program administered by McKesson.
McKesson declined our request for an on-camera interview. They wouldn't tell us if Goldstein or any other doctor has been sanctioned. In an email, McKesson did write the requirements of a REMS program are developed jointly by the manufacturers and the FDA, with ultimate approval resting with the FDA. The FDA also declined our request for an interview. The FDA admits to a hands-off approach to the program. They don't even know the names of the doctors Turf REMS certified.
You know, something's strange, and it's not the normal business that you're used to.
Bill Renton spent nearly 50 years in drug enforcement, including a stretch as special agent in charge at the DEA.
I really don't know how Big Pharma got involved in managing a program that's designed to basically control Big Pharma.
Is that a conflict?
I certainly think so.
Doctors who want to prescribe drugs in this program need to complete an 11-question quiz, but it's an open book test with the answers easily found in this 9-page handout.
Is it safe to say you don't need a medical degree to pass this open book test?
No, you don't need a medical degree.
It's pretty easy.
You probably need a high school education and the ability to read it and answer the questions. It's very easy, and it's nothing complex.
The FDA is aware of serious concerns about drugs prescribed in this program. Its own website shows harmful reactions from patients given these potent drugs to treat relatively minor medical issues like migraines.
I don't think anybody treats migraines with morphine, much less fentanyl.
On McKesson's watch, the FDA's website shows doctors also prescribe these powerful drugs for groin pain, oral pain, and more.
Can you ever imagine fentanyl being used for a headache?
No.
A muscle spasm?
No.
Neck
I can't.
pain?
No.
With McKesson administering the program in a 3-year period, TurfRem's brand name prescriptions in Medicare more than doubled. Nearly 65% of the top 100 TurfRem's prescribers were family doctors, nurse practitioners, and other non-cancer, non-pain doctors.
McKesson had no interest in shutting people down from getting this drug because they supply the drug.
These TurfRem's drugs cost big money. Dina Demarest Insurance Company spent up to $36,000 a month on her prescription, helping bring in big profits for drug companies like McKesson, ranked number 5 in the Fortune 500.
This market has been dominated by McKesson.
A company also in the headlines for making large returns for investors.
More than 239% over the last 5 years. In short, McKesson is a powerhouse.
And high-ranking leaders.
At the top is John Hammergren. He's the CEO of McKesson Corp. That's a healthcare company. He makes a whopping $131 million a year.
A company handed the keys to an opioid oversight program with the blessing of the federal government that also fined McKesson a record $150 million for fueling the opioid epidemic.
Federal government should step up, or the medical boards or the pharmacy board should step up and try and take over this program.
After our story aired, U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy questioned the FDA about the program and whether the oversight had been enough. Cassidy said the FDA, quote, conceded. The Louisiana senator is also a medical doctor. He says our story called into question how the program and these doctors are being monitored.
Because of your report and bringing it to our attention, we contacted the FDA. They are going to put together a public advisory committee, bringing together stakeholders to see how they can make that REMS system work better, entirely in response to the investigative reporting you've done and then our inquiry with FDA.
The FDA began its intensive review of the program in early August. Cassidy says the result should be a tighter oversight of these powerful drugs.
There should be an audit, both of the prescribers, the doctors prescribing, the pharmacists filling, as well as McKesson. And that audit should be on a periodic basis to make sure that a drug as powerful as this is being used appropriately.
Lax oversight by the FDA and McKesson allowed exploitation by some doctors, like Jeffrey Goldstein and Todd Schliffstein, the 2 New York doctors we profiled earlier. After our report, a New York City grand jury indicted both doctors for prescribing a powerful narcotic in exchange for money, expensive dinners, and a $4,000 trip to a strip club. According to the Manhattan U.S. Attorney, they engaged in a malignant scheme to prescribe fentanyl in exchange for bribes. While prescribing this dangerous drug, Schliffstein and Goldstein took money from the drug's maker, Insys Therapeutics. The indictment tells a story of Insys taking Schliffstein and Goldstein to that Manhattan strip club, where the pharma company spent about $4,100 on a private room, drinks, and lap dances for the 2 doctors. The indictment says that outing and the tens of thousands of dollars in speaker fees led the 2 doctors to increase their subsys prescriptions. The feds arrested both doctors. If found guilty, Goldstein and Schliffstein could be sentenced to more than 30 years each in federal prison. Goldstein and Schliffstein did not return our request for a comment. In a statement, Insys wrote the company continues striving to take responsibility for inappropriate actions of some former employees and has invested significant resources over the last several years to establish an effective compliance program and build an organizational culture of high ethical standards. Still to come on License to Pill.
We trust those folks. We trust them. That we put their lives in their hands.
The feds are looking at 2 more doctors we profiled. Details next. The federal government accuses several doctors featured in our License to Pill series of accepting kickbacks in return for prescribing a dangerous drug. According to a civil case recently unsealed, the providers fraudulently billed taxpayers nearly $70 million.
Patients clinging to life.
You're lucky to be alive.
Amen. Absolutely.
Near-death experiences, the product of greed.
What if my kids would have lost me because of him trying to pad his pockets?
Investigate TV has questioned whether several providers have improperly prescribed Subsys, a drug 100 times more powerful than morphine, only meant for cancer patients. These doctors took money from the drug's maker, Insys Therapeutics. Insys labeled it consultant or speaker fees to help promote the drug.
The problem is that you have profiteers that are working within this specific realm, i.e. doctors, pharmacies, and the pharmaceutical company, who are taking advantage of the system.
The doctors who improperly prescribed Subsys to Tamison Witherspoon and Dina Demarest have been charged, but other doctors Investigate TV analyzed remain licensed. A recently unsealed federal lawsuit details the depth of the alleged fraud and the cost to taxpayers. We told you about Florida anesthesiologist Bart Gatz. He took $230,000 of Insys money for consulting and meals. Since 2012, his Subsys prescriptions cost Medicare $3.3 million. The complaint alleges in 2013, 2 Insys executives took Gatz to an Arizona strip club. Days later, Gatz sent a text message to one executive writing, "Thank you for the best weekend in years." According to Medicare data, another Florida doctor, Edward Lubin, wrote the 3rd highest amount of Subsys prescriptions in the country. Lubin received $160,000 from Insys in speaker fees. According to the complaint, since 2013, Lubin filed as much as $4.1 million of Subsys claims. The government calls many of his speeches shams, alleging most of his speaking events were conducted at pharmacies, even though pharmacists cannot prescribe Subsys. The U.S. government joined 5 former Insys employees in accusing Gatz, Lubin, and 18 other medical professionals of accepting payments from the company and billing the government about $70 million. As of June, 11 doctors named in the civil lawsuit, including Gatz and Lubin, have not been charged with a crime. In fact, Investigate TV found about 85% of all doctors who received at least $50,000 from Insys still have an active medical license.
That's scary.
Randy Hood represents several patients suing doctors involved in the Insys speaker program.
Unfortunately, patients are the victims. And when I say victims, I don't mean that like, oh, feel sorry for them or oh, I'm so sorry for them. I mean, they were unwittingly duped into taking a medication. Many of these, not all, but many were unwittingly duped into taking a medication that's highly addictive and basically caused destruction of their lives for a very long period of time, and some people died.
Should this be regulated more?
The question is, who should regulate it?
Dr. Eric Campbell has spent 20 years studying the financial relationship between doctors and drug makers.
There's a wealth of data showing that doctors who receive payments from drug companies for promotional speaking are significantly more likely to be heavy users of those companies' products and services.
Which is legal, as long as the payments don't entice doctors to write more prescriptions. Campbell says about 85% of the doctors in the U.S. accept payments from drug companies.
Payments many times are simply nothing more than a sham for a kind of kickback that doctors receive. And that's problematic because in that case, the doctor's financial interest may have superseded his or her primary concern, which is for the health and welfare of their patients.
This was an intentional decision by this company.
Randy Hood represents a young mother whose doctor treated hip pain with the cancer drug Subsys. It left her mostly toothless and suffering from stroke-like symptoms. The doctors moved his practice to New York.
We trust those folks. We trust them. That we put their lives in their hands. And he put money in his pocket over her safety.
Gatz and Lubin didn't respond to our requests for comment. License to Pill is an investigative project that's taken nearly a year to research and report. The Investigate TV team analyzed millions of records looking at the discipline, court, and prescription history of thousands of doctors. License to Pill showed regulators beholden to Big Pharma as the opioid crisis claims more and more of our neighbors, our family members. The DEA has cracked down on some of these doctors, but many still practice, still prescribe, unchecked. A recent Inspector General report conceded even states that have done the most to try and curb the opioid crisis are still losing the battle. A battle the U.S. Attorney General called the deadliest drug crisis in U.S. history. Thanks for watching this Investigate TV special, License to Pill.